Hey everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather forecast for the week of July 26th through August 1st. And the first thing I want to mention actually is something that actually perfected yesterday, Sunday, and didn't get a chance to squeeze in last week. I went really overtime last week on the things I did mention, but since it happened on Sunday and it's still kind of in effect today, Monday, I thought I'd mention this because it was a signature, or it is a signature of a lot of stress, and that is that Mercury got into a cardinal T-square with an opposition to Pluto, and both Pluto and Mercury squaring Eris. And if you'll remember, Eris stationed retrograde last week. So whenever a planet stations either retrograde or direct, and Eris not a planet but a Kuiper belt body in this case, you see that the energy of that planet and what its archetypal energy is really, lifted up or very acute at that time, especially in the physical world. And of course, Eris, as I've explained before, is the goddess of chaos. So a lot of chaotic type of events is what we can expect when that energy gets involved in a tense aspect like a T-square. So this is a cardinal T-square. So basically with Mercury involved and Pluto involved too, what you have is having to make a very quick decision because of an intense type of situation that's come up that has to do with either communications or information or transportation or business, all those things that Mercury rules. So some kind of intense energy around that stuff has come up and brought in by a crisis that literally can be, from your point of view, considered chaotic, which is where Eris comes in. Now, the other kind of energy that can really be going on is a very coercive type of energy when Mercury and Pluto, and you add Eris in there too. So it's almost like the energy of propaganda is reaching a very high apex right now, and then this an energy of coercion, an energy of trying to get people or others to see things your way, and acting behind the scenes, or saying things that are trying to control the dialogue in and get people to come around to your point of view. So what's positive about this energy is the ability to work on a really deep, intricate level, mentally or intellectually. So really having a deep researching kind of mind, and it can be definitely obsessive and narrow-minded in a way too, but when used to work on your stuff that is deep kind of stuff that you really need to throw yourself into, whether it's positive or negative, it doesn't really matter. This really can get at the core of a lot of that stuff and get the mind very focused into moving that stuff forward. But so basically looking from a wider viewpoint, this probably bringing up issues in personal lives, and you can see a lot of these issues in the social level already going on, a lot of chaotic type of events that where you're having to make some kind of really quick decision about what to do in response to a very intense situation. So that energy, like I said, perfected yesterday, Sunday, but is still very much in effect today, early this week. So the main thing going on this week is 3 of the planets are changing signs and one of the asteroids too. And interestingly enough, they all kind of like, because they're all changing signs, that means they're right at the last degree or two of the signs they're in. So they're all aspecting one another as this is happening. So that's kind of interesting. And then there's some interesting stuff going on with Venus getting involved with Saturn and Chiron next weekend. And also next weekend, some really serious decision making is coming up. So let's look at those 3 things. So the first thing is, like I said, there's 3 planets plus one of the asteroids changing signs this week. And the first one is going to be Mercury going into Leo on Tuesday, tomorrow. And at the same time will be quincunxing Jupiter, which is about to go back into Aquarius. So Mercury in Leo is like very like Mercury's all about our communication. So Leo is like, has a very strong point of view about things and really, wants to like push that point of view and get people to come around to like seeing that. And so like at times you have to be a little bit careful when Mercury's in Leo about how arrogant you can be coming off as, or adopting too much of a self-righteous tone, and therefore like really like maybe pushing people away from you who would maybe be able to help you normally in what you're doing. So that way, but if that can be kept checked and in balance, then it can be, people can see, the creativity, the ingenuity of your viewpoint, and like actually put you in a spot where you can be a leader. So with Leo, it's so much about our own creativity. So like this is a time where we can be where the thing we're good at, whatever we're good at, it's a chance where we can be a leader in that situation, as long as we don't get too arrogant. But we have to be the thing we have to be careful of with Mercury and Leo is we get like our pride really gets involved, and our ego really gets involved in our ideas. So like they can be very individualized and ingenious, but if we're so subjective and not being receptive, then it can be hard for people to want to receive that. And then the quincunx Jupiter just makes it all the much more difficult to control that kind of like arrogant streak, because Jupiter's just going to inflate it, and it sees that it does have some like great grandiose big ideas that are very like future oriented and have a very wide vision a more tolerant kind of vision too of what the future can be. But at the same time, it can once again very easily fall into like this kind of arrogant or privileged kind of attitude. And what that kind of does a lot of times is have with Jupiter especially involved, is this have us overlook the details, the things that are the annoying little things that have to be taken care of in order for the plan with the wider, broader vision to actually work in a smooth way. So that's what, is the stuff that, when we adopt an arrogant or self-righteous tone, we have a tendency to dismiss that stuff, and later on it trips us up. So that's, it's this quincunx. It's kind of awkward. So we gotta need to do that. So like I said, at the same time that, we have Mercury going into Leo, we have Jupiter coming back into Aquarius. Remember, Jupiter went retrograde a month or so ago, was only at 2 degrees Pisces at the time. And this is really the year of Jupiter in Aquarius. Next year will be the year that Jupiter is mainly in Pisces. So back into Aquarius, and I know I talked in much more detail about Jupiter in Aquarius earlier in the year, so I'm not going to get too much back into it, but it does stay in Aquarius until December 24th, so it's basically the rest of this year. It will continue to retrograde back in Aquarius and then eventually turn direct in the fall and head back towards Pisces and eventually get there on the 24th of December. But, just remember that, for, on a social level, this is really, you see expansion on a lot of technological levels. The businesses that have to do with technology will probably see a lot of expansion and growth while Jupiter's in Aquarius. And also, it's all about, injecting new ideas into old ways of doing things or old systems of doing things. So that's where a lot of the social focus is, which really, kind of fits in with the new administration in the United States coming in, because you do see new ideas going into that kind of thing. But as I said earlier too, in the year, that the main thing you can really expect on the Jupiter and Aquarius social level is a real big movement for social changes, people really wanting to push social change in whatever direction they want to push society in. So it's really going to be a year where those things are really important to people, and because it's Aquarius, it is having a lot to do with what people consider equality or social justice issues. So it's really interesting with Jupiter in Aquarius, and I did mention this earlier in the year too, is people have a tendency not to listen to authorities anymore. They have a tendency to share information within more of a group thing that's more equal. So you see this even going on now, where a lot of the, authorities' messages to their populations is basically being ignored. People just, are not paying attention to that stuff. They don't see leadership as important anymore when Jupiter is in Aquarius. And so that, I mentioned that earlier, but that, and then at the same time, like I said, all these guys are interacting with one another. Mars now, is going to oppose that Jupiter. So really, really intense energy there. That Mars and Jupiter together is superpower energy, and you can really make some great strides ahead. You can get and make decisions to get very active and move forward. And once again, the biggest danger is similar to the Mercury Jupiter when it's Mars Jupiter, is that just getting very impulsive with what you're doing without actually thinking about some of the consequences or things that need to be taken care of that can later on kind of trip you up in the middle of your project, because you didn't deal with some of the more delicate things that needed to be taken care of too. But it's a very, very active energy. The other danger about Mars Jupiter is that same thing too about Mercury going into Leo, is to get this very arrogant or self-righteous tone. Jupiter is so much about our values and what we believe in. And Mars is so much about like our ego and where we're coming from and where we're springing our actions from. So like, they can get together in a tougher aspect, like the opposition, and really inflate that like arrogance and pride and ego kind of energy. So once again, this is a very prevalent energy this week that we can easily tip in the scale of driving people away from us and our projects and thoughts if we're not careful about that, where that line is. And at the same time, we have Jupiter squaring Ceres, which is right at the end of Taurus. And, like I've said before, Ceres is all about like, meeting our nurturing needs, physically, emotionally, and all that. And that has been a very challenging thing for the past couple years in the world with, the COVID situation and things like that. So once again, this is going to inflate a lot of that energy and the stress that people are feeling. And that can really be what's pushing actually a lot of the energy of the Mars Jupiter and the Mercury Jupiter, like what's really pushing people to be that pushy, to have these big other plans and these long-term goals and really want to push them now and maybe overlook a lot of the things and details that need to be taken care of. It's the trigger can actually be trying to create a more solid foundation of nurturing and making sure your needs are being met. So that has a lot to do with that. And then and Ceres will go into Gemini then later in the week, and that's when you'll see this turn of like people like wanting to communicate or gather information to like meet those kind of nurturing needs. So like communication and sharing information becomes really vital for nurturing needs to feel like they're being met while Ceres is in Gemini. Now, if you're not feeling like your nurturing needs are being met when Ceres is in Gemini, then you can kind of start to become like a little tricky or devious in your mind about how you may try to get what you feel you're lacking, and that can be get into some negative territory if we're not careful about things like that. Now at the same time, Mars is going to be the last planet going into another sign, as it will go into Virgo. And I believe that's on Thursday when Mars goes into Virgo. Yes, it is. So Mars into Virgo on Thursday. And this, Mars into Virgo is like when we can start to slow down some of our actions. And Virgo's all about taking care of the details. So there may be this really good flow of like, okay, we see some big plan or action or project that we're involved in, then suddenly get a little bit of a reality feedback check early midweek about like things that are not being addressed that are going to create problems. And then Mars will go into Virgo and like be like, okay, let me roll up my sleeves here and get down to the details that I need to take care of. So that Mars in Virgo is very carefully thought out and conceived actions. It's like the energy of the craftsman, the energy of like having tools and knowing how to use them with precision in our actions to get what we want. The danger of Mars in Virgo is like anything else when it goes into Virgo is to get highly critical or judgmental of what others' actions may be. And that, can always get you a little bit out on an island with people if you get too much into that zone. So interesting energy going on with these 3 planets and asteroid, all changing signs in midweek basically, and all interacting with one another and showing that, our ideas and projects that may be some grand vision really need, we're going to see the things that need to be taken care of now, which can be a little annoying and frustrating, force us to make some decisions about how we're going to move forward and take care of the details of these things. So just one whole package there going on. And like I said, 2 other things I wanted to mention. So it talked a lot all this year really about the Saturn sextiling Chiron and the opportunity to build new healing structures that are solid and foundational and in their energy. So Venus next weekend is going to get involved with that sextile. It's going to actually quincunx both Saturn and Chiron. So that is creating what we call a yod, and I've talked about yods before as being like a very fateful type of aspect, that there's less free will involved in a yod many times than other aspects, that we kind of need to almost just go, or really just go with the flow of the way events are unfolding, because those events have a better idea of where our destination needs to be than we do. And that may be hard to accept. So the 2 quincunxes is this awkwardness that is this feeling that yods may bring when we feel like, normally we need to take control of a situation, but when we try to do that with a yod, it makes it much more difficult to try to steer the ship. It's really like, just let it go, let it flow, and it's going to take us to where we really need to end up being. So with the Venus getting between these, there can really, to me, this is going to have a lot to do with self-worth issues and how we relate to others, and feeling like maybe an unworthiness of getting what we really want from others, and feeling like almost like a shyness, like an insecurity on a kind of social level of how we fit in certain relationships. But yet the Chiron is there, and it's trying to show us ways that we can do that we can heal or soothe one another's insecurities or worthy self-worth type issues by creating opportunities for us to feel safe in situations and relationships. But it's good, like I said, it's a yod, so there's not a lot of us steering the ship. It's kind of like we're going to be faced with these issues on whatever level we're on, and through things that are happening mainly in relationships, and just try to let it lead us to that place where there's some answer for us. So it is an opportunity to heal a lot of self-worth issues and thus become more confident in your relationships and socializing. And then the last one is going to be a tough one. On Sunday next weekend, the Sun and Mercury are going to have their superior conjunction. That's the one, that's the non-retrograde conjunction. And that's in Leo, which is, both very strong, subjective, egotistical energy, very like wanting things our way and very like seeing things our way and maybe not very receptive to like outside input. And then we have this opposition to Saturn coming up, which means, of course, next week they're going to be hitting Uranus too. So it's basically triggering the Saturn-Uranus square, and it'll be a continuing story into next week. But what I really think is going to happen on the weekend is we are going to have to probably make some kind of big decision in relation to the practical or real world. And it can probably feel, for many of us, very inhibiting as to what we really want to do. It's going to have to, be one of these things of practical reality having to be dealt with and feeling like it's not what we would ever want to choose to do, but what we have to do given the situations that we're in. So it can be tough. Now, and I think people who have a lot of earth energy will probably deal with it a little bit better because they deal with practical stuff and making decisions about that on a regular basis in a very serious way more than other people do. So, but at the same time, I just think it's going to be one of these things of almost having to or not almost, having to accept where, reality is and in all these different things, in our life, in communication, in business, in travel, and all many of the things that go on in our daily life, and make some kind of serious practical decisions about how we're going to deal with issues that are coming up. And obviously a lot of those issues will be tied to the Saturn-Uranus square. And that meaning structure, once again, that's, falling apart around us, both in our personal lives and in society, having to hop onto making serious decisions about those things. So can definitely bring in a kind of unfortunately for many people it can bring in a half empty kind of outlook or a depressing kind of outlook, when knowing we have to accept certain things that are holding us back, and that's just where it's at, and that can create a lot of resentment and things like that. So it's not an easy decision-making process coming up next weekend and early next week. All right, that's it for this week. Next week will be the beginning of August. So I'll be looking at the monthly for August, and not only the weekly. And we'll have a new moon in Leo next week too. So those are two of the things to look forward to on the blog next week. This is the Astrological Winds channel. It's on YouTube. Become a follower and then turn your notifications on, and you won't miss when I put an episode up. I do try to social media people, but I'm getting more and more followers, so I am missing more and more people. So it's really a little bit of a self-responsibility thing here if you want to be sure you don't miss the blog. And remember, the blog is on all kinds of podcasts too. You really don't have to do the video version. I'm just talking to a camera here most of the time. So it's really the listening part That's the important thing. So it's on all kinds of podcasts. Just look up Astrological Winds channel, Apple iPodcasts, Spotify. There's like 15 or so that are carrying it. If you want a reading, I am available for all types of readings. Natal charts, that's your birth chart. Predictive, which is similar to what I do every week here. Just look at the year ahead for your astrological weather. Relationship charts, children's charts, fixed star readings for people who are looking into like more of a deeper soul purpose. And then also elections for when you're wanting to choose the best time to do something. Horary questions, if you need an answer that you're not able to get and are feeling emotionally stressed. All those things I am available for, and other things too, events, my email to get in contact with me about any of that, discuss pricing and scheduling and things is mattthue823@gmail.com. That is also my account on Venmo or Zelle. I know some folks like to give me a donation for this free service, but really the best way you can pay me for this free service is to pass it on to someone else. And if you or someone that you know needs a reading, I'm here for you. But yeah, if you'd like to send a donation, please, like I said, that's mattthue823@gmail.com. No donation is too small, and either Venmo or Zelle, you can find me under that. All right. I think that's going to do it for this week. Next week, like I said, we'll look at August, and we got a new moon. But an interesting week, just try to to find the right balance between our broader vision and getting it into action, and then having to maybe make some serious decisions about all that, and at the same time continue to learn about ourselves through relationships. All right, until next week, this is Matt Lawton signing off on the Astrological Winds channel.